All right, it's another film study for week 6. We're going to talk about the offense and the fact that they put up 30 points once again. Ken McKusick, how you doing?
Life's good, Josh. How about you?
I'm all good. Weather's great down here in Florida. Weather's great up there, I'm seeing.
Yep, 74, good dog walking weather, no complaints.
It's all good, and we got Coach with us. Coach Evans, how's the weather out there? Doing well?
It's doing fine. We're not far from you guys and had a good day at practice today, probably like 82, 83. A little overcast that time, so it was a great day.
Coach, we're so thrilled to have you back again for the first time this year. You've been absent for way too long, but one of our favorite guests, obviously. We're really happy. Your YouTube channel, Sip to Tally Films?
That's correct. The SIP, the number 2 films.
It's Sip to Tally, right?
Yeah, SIP 2 Tally,
Yeah.
the number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. And also on Instagram too, it's SIP to Tally Films. So I try to keep it close to the same thing.
Well, you said you're on YouTube and Instagram. You on TikTok now too?
Oh no,
With those videos, come on.
Save that for the kiddos.
Keep up with the young kids.
No, save that for the kiddos.
Okay, and Sip to Tally, I've seen this on the cloth framed item in the back there, but SIP is for Mississippi.
Yes.
SIP, and for two, and Tally is Tallahassee, where you are now.
Yeah, okay. Correct.
Great. All right, and Coach, if you haven't heard him on the show before, is a high school football coach.
Correct.
There, what kind of school do you coach at?
Public school. Well, we were 5A public school in Tallahassee.
Okay, and you guys have had some success recently?
Yeah, we got to the third round of the playoffs last year, and we're automatically in the playoffs this year because every school in Florida did not decide to play football.
Huh.
So you had an opt-in date. So even if we lose all 6 of our games, but right now we're 2-1. But even if we lost all 6 of our regular season games, we're in the playoffs. We already have a site and everything where we're going because a lot of schools opted not to play.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Well, not for all the teams that are not playing, but great news for.
I wish
there.
Major League Baseball would have done that this year. It would have been fun.
And the Orioles could have had a one-game playoff against the Yankees, say, and
Hey, one game, you never know what happens.
never know.
Coach, last week we did a show about all the COVID protocols the Ravens are dealing with in the NFL. How's that going with high school football?
Well, and like I was speaking, off camera, we're doing pretty much anything we can to help out with it and to prevent it. Like I told you guys earlier, we have coaches on the sideline with hand sanitizer and wiping down whatever surfaces the kids may get close to or use. Our trainers or the young ladies that help out with the water, they touch their own bottles. The player's not allowed to touch them. So they're basically giving guys water like you see in the NFL. The trainers would do. Because the guy's not allowed to grab the bottle and chug them like that. So we're just doing a bunch of different things. Anything that we can think of that would help out so we can continue to play, that's what we're doing.
Well, good to hear. I hope that really works out, Coach. Let's talk a little bit about the Ravens and the Eagles now. Move forward here. Are you concerned more about the defense's inability to close this game out? Some of the failures in terms of picking off the balls that they had or recovering fumbles, and they had a bunch of balls that were loose on the ground or in their hands. Both of those they didn't close on. Or are you more concerned at this point about the offensive line and how they played?
And in my opinion, it's the offensive line. Because if we could have sustained drives, we wouldn't have been in those situations to even give up those points. Sustaining drives and controlling the clock. And even though we won time possession by almost 10 minutes, it feels like we didn't. Because, they had the ball and were moving so fast in that second half, as far as scoring and whatnot.
Yeah, they sure did. In that fourth quarter, they were moving right up and down the field. Ravens are at the bye now, and I guess the broad general question I'll have for you is, what do you hope that the Ravens get sorted out over the bye? Whether it's acquisitions, positional switches, getting healthy. What are you looking for over this bye?
2 things: to solidify right tackle, right guard, whoever it is. Just solidify it and have 5 guys so they can start to gel as we get down the stretch run. And to find out what we're going to do with Miles Boykin.
Okay, Miles Boykin. Okay, so that means that we're getting another receiver. I've got a third thing to add to that. I think the Ravens need to find a slot cornerback, and I know we're not talking about that tonight, but slot corner would allow Humphrey to move back outside. It would be an extra cornerback of depth. I think it's probably easier to find that guy than an aircraft carrier outside corner, who would be one more guy, and it also really fits their needs more. And that would allow Jimmy Smith, hopefully, to maintain flexibility to play either safety or corner. I still feel like Jimmy is too valuable as a corner to allow him to play safety, but they're doing it, and he's been good. So I don't know what to do here other than just pray he won't get hurt.
Especially with Avery being hurt. But Deshaun has held his own. Matter of fact, that's who I was working on, when I stopped to help you record, working on Deshaun Elliott.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. I think we've seen it all from him, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, but range on the back end, the playmaking ability, certainly, second man to the ball skills. I'm not too concerned about the fact that he dropped the interception. He's going to get many more interception opportunities. The guy knows where to be on a football field, chasing down the 74-yard run, knocking that ball loose. Really special play. Just happened to go the Eagles' way, but hey, it was a nice coin flip play to get at the end of a play where they were at the 5-yard line. So
Right.
All right, and you guys missed the other thing that the Orioles front office has to work on, or Ravens front office during the bye week, is working out with the mayor to get some fans in the game for coming off the bye week.
And now we did get a email. PSL holders did,
Yes.
saying we've got an opportunity to buy tickets, and I sent
Yes.
mine in and said I want to do it, and they haven't contacted me yet.
Well, there's a footnote in there that they are working on getting permission to have fans in. So the governor has given approval. They now need the mayor to give approval, and they're trying to get 7,000 fans in for the Steelers game.
Yeah, I think they got approval to sell the Steelers tickets, but not necessarily to have the fans there.
Right.
Meaning they'll just have to refund the money the way they would for a playoff
Yes.
game or whatever that get played.
Right.
So it's at least we're at that point, and I just want to hear tomorrow that I got some Steelers tickets, and it's a very difficult thing to figure out because you can ask for anywhere between 2 and 6 tickets, but I tried to call them and ask them, am I better off asking for 6, and that'll give me any option of 5, 4, 3, or 2 if the 6 is not available. And they said if you only want 2 tickets, just go for 2 tickets. And I'm like, well, don't mind taking a chance, but just tell me what is going to maximize my chances. And she really didn't know, and I couldn't go any further than that.
Right. It sounds like 2 would probably maximize your chances because it's not like they have certain sections of 6, certain sections of 2.
Yes, they do. They have certain sections of 6 and certain sections of 2.
Well,
So
are they already defined, or
Yes.
is it once the tickets are sold,
I
they're
agree.
renting it out?
They're selling them in groups like that.
predefined
Okay.
pods of 2 to
Pods,
6.
Yep.
Okay. See, I thought that they were saying you could buy 2 to 6, and then they would group you afterwards. So
Not as I understand it.
Gotcha. All right. So you're going to have to find 6 people that you're comfortable with sharing COVID with.
That's exactly it. So I have to really be careful about that.
Right.
Maureen is extremely sensitive about this too, so it's a tough issue for us.
Yeah. It's something everyone's figuring out. So, real quick before we get into the O-line scoring, this is going to be a new kind of ad space. If you've noticed, listening to Film Study, we haven't had any ads in a while, and that hasn't been good because it means that we're putting a lot of work in, and this little small business isn't making any money. So we're working on fixing all that. So starting next week, we've got some ads showing up, and our request is that you check out the sponsors. I can't say who they are now, but they're interesting sponsors. Some I use, some I don't use yet, but maybe will. And just check them out. Tell them that on social media that you love Film Study, and for them to keep advertising on Film Study, and go check out their sites. Meanwhile, you can help us out by going on over to filmstudybaltimore.com, spreading the word, sharing. We've got that new logo with some new shirts up there with the new logo on it if you want to wear that logo when you're heading out to the stadium in a couple weeks. So just look for ads coming next week, and here's my chance to beg here so it sounds all professional when we have the real sponsors next week. So, all right, Ken and Coach, let's get in. I got that spiel out of the way. Let's get into this O-line.
All right, sounds good, because I think that's the biggest story of the bye week, and coming out of this game, what had happened. Let's take a quick look through these guys, and I'm going to go overall first. There were 65 scored snaps in the game, a ridiculous 8 penalties. I did not look back to see the last time that ever happened to the Ravens, but I think it might be the first. I would not be surprised if it was the first, let's put it that way. 5 different offensive linemen had penalties, led by Stanley with 4. People ask me about how does that affect the scoring. It is very significant, but the average score was reduced by 0.10 by this fact. There were 33 negative penalty points on 55 yards on 326 blocks, including one 6-man line. So it worked out to be 0.10. pretty significant, more than a grade level at some positions, a grade level at offensive tackle. So it tells you it's a significant component of the scoring. What was nice about the offensive line play is that they did not allow a sack, meaning all the sacks were basically extended plays where Jackson ran into a sack or tried to turn into a running play that went for 0 yards early in the game. So that at least was good news.
Yeah, just from the looks of it, they're if Lamar would just stay in a certain spot, which we know is not going to happen, and I'm not complaining, so don't take this as complaining. But if he was just a drop back guy, they would be a lot better as far as coming out on the scoring end of it. We wouldn't see those sacks like that because they're doing a good job of keeping the initial rush off. It's just when he starts to move around a little bit and they don't really know where he is when I see, with the naked eye, that they may get into a little trouble.
Yeah, he doesn't get rid of the ball like a normal quarterback. He really waits until he's pressured 15 yards past behind the line of scrimmage before he unloads it. And there is some of that. But then also we saw in the red zone, and got to give him credit on the other side of this, that Lamar basically takes away the need for the Ravens to throw a fade route or even some of the high zipper routes, just to be clear what this is, I know you know what they are, Coach, between the goalposts high up to a receiver that's either crossing or sometimes a tight end coming right off the line of scrimmage. But you put it there where only he can get it. They don't have to play those kind of lower percentage routes because Jackson makes so much space with his own legs in terms of throwing lanes. And he meandered over to that right corner. He had a block from Boyle. Then Boyle left. He hit him at the 2-yard line. And that was just the kind of thing that Lamar, his gravitational pull, as I've heard it called, created that opening in the red zone. And it's why he's such a special red zone quarterback.
It's a weapon like we've never seen before in the NFL.
All right, well, let's keep going with the offensive line a little bit. They gave up 8 pressures in this game. And let's see, they gave Jackson 27% ample time and space, 8 out of 30. That's a low total. So the Eagles' offensive line certainly had lots of push in the game. Jackson was getting rid of the ball early. Jackson had a lot of designed roles that are not ample time and space unless they create it by deception, which wasn't really the case. It was a lot of opportunities for Jackson still to extend plays, but he did so under some duress, and that was despite the fact that on 29 of 30 pass rushes, the Eagles rushed 4, which is pretty scary, isn't it, Coach?
I would love for that to happen on the other side, but that's another story. But and the thing is, and when I had my call-in show afterwards, a lot of people were complaining about the O-line. And I had to kind of tell the people who was on Philadelphia's O-line. Fletcher Cox. I mean, we can kind of agree he's top 3 or 4 in the NFL. Yeah. And you got a rookie right there trying to deal with Fletcher Cox. And if they put him in a 3 technique, he's pretty much blocking him by himself. He may have help if Cox is in the 1. But if they put Cox in the 3 technique, Phillips is blocking him by himself.
Cox was on Phillips the whole day. I gave him a big adjustment for it, but you're exactly right. It was a mano-a-mano contest between those two, and I think we're going to find out. Phillips actually, I didn't think was that bad.
Exactly.
Given who he is.
Exactly. And they got other guys on the line that are okay to, average to better than average, but, Cox set all that up. He sets all of it up.
He's a superstar, but Javon Hargrave is a great interior pass rusher. We knew him from the Steelers and him abusing our centers in the past as the Steelers nose tackle. But they have Brandon Graham.
Sweat surprised me.
It's an incredibly well-paid and talented defensive line there. I mean, if you want to complain about what the Ravens pay their defensive line players, it's nothing like what Philadelphia pays theirs. So they're really spending the whole lunch money right there. All right, so what else I got to say about this? So here's the big one from this game. Now, normally you hear me talk about the pulling guards, and the Ravens very pull-dependent offense, of course, right-handed run game. I talk about that. Bozeman, in fact, is one of the guys who does a lot of pulling. The Ravens had 17 pulls in this game. And normally, 13, 14, maybe 12 on a bad game they would have. 1 point on 17 pulls. Now, you can get negative points, and they did in this game on some of Bozeman's one. In fact, McCary had a I don't remember if it was a pressure or penetration, but he had a -2 on his only pull. And Bozeman had -1 points on his 10 pulls.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea. And Bozeman, very reliable puller. So I don't think it was all him. I think it was a matter of complete disruption up front in terms of his ability to run his normal lane to make the pull. And some of it he had to loop wide and couldn't make a block. Some of it, there was engagement already, he couldn't find a block. And other times he had to make a block and he didn't do it. And so we had a lot of difficulty with that. And it was the biggest thing the Eagles did to the Ravens' run game was just to not allow them to get their pulling game going at all, which obviously is a very big part of what they do.
What I saw Sunday was a term my head coach now uses, and he uses it a lot, calling block destruction. And so that's what I saw a lot of penetration. And when Bozeman would try to pull, instead of him meeting with that clean alley to get around and get to whoever he's kicking out or wrapping to, he was met by one of the guys that should have been down blocked and his lineman.
Mm-hmm.
So he couldn't get where he needed to be and now you got somebody running free. You got somebody running free to the hole that the running back's trying to hit, and that's especially the play, and I don't know which one it was, but when Gus lost yards, that blew my mind because he don't lose yards.
It doesn't happen very often, that's for sure. And the Ravens running backs as a group had an awful day in terms of average yards per carry. So I'm not even sure we need to go over again, but I'm going to do it quickly just because that's who I am here. But we had Jackson was fine. He had 12 yards a carry, and even more than that when you take out the two kneels. But Dobbins had 3.1 per carry on 9. Edwards was 14 for 26, 1.9, and he was one of the best runners in the whole league. Coming in, Ingram was 5 for 20 before he left the game early, which we probably want to talk to you about how serious a problem that is.
All right.
But let's talk about the offensive line a little more before we do.
Okay.
So Stanley had the 4 penalties we know. Other than those, which is kind of like saying, other than this gaping chest wound you have, things are fine. He actually was pretty good otherwise. He allowed 2 pressures, but the penalties really were what caused it. They gave him a D in total in this game.
Yeah, especially the lining up in the backfield. Those
Yes.
are, you can deal with effort penalties, holdings. I mean, you don't like holdings, but they come from effort. Maybe a block in the back come from effort, but pre-snap stuff that you just not lining up close enough to the line. And then the NFL is so lenient with it compared to other stages of football. So that he had to be blatantly in the backfield for him to call that.
Now, do you talk to your own team about the difference between a false start and an illegal formation? Because illegal formation is a much more serious penalty. A false start, if they do that, that's a pre-snap penalty. It freezes the play, 5-yard penalty. That's it. That's the end of story. But with an illegal formation penalty, it's a 5-yard penalty unless the result of the play is worse. It's giving the defense a free play. Do you have that discussion with your kids at all to say, hey, look, I can live with a false start, but I can't live with you lining up wrong and costing us the optionality of that play lost?
I think, if I'm following you right, I think the ball's blown dead for us.
Oh, on illegal formation?
I think so. I think the ball's blown dead for us. I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's blown dead for us because we don't have that a lot, but we don't run a ton of formations either.
Okay.
So we don't have illegal formation. Like we have false start or offsides and stuff like that. But I don't recall us having a lot of illegal formations. And if it is, it's more like a receiver's not on the ball or something like that.
Sure.
And
how about illegal?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Illegal motion, it may take place in that. Like if 2 guys in motion, because they blow the whistle and 2 guys in motion. So they stop us.
Okay, so another one that's a 5-yard penalty would be an illegal man downfield. I don't know how often that gets called at that level, but
it does with the RPOs. With a lot of RPOs that schools run, it gets called quite a bit.
Okay, very inconsistently called at the NFL level. I've seen a lot of players down. We had one in this game where Brown was 5 yards down from the play, and it ended up being a run that honestly, it ended up being a pass that he should have been flagged for.
Yeah, if the guys' eyes are not where they need to be, speaking of the referees, it happens a lot because with the RPO stuff, the O-line don't know if it's, for the most part, if it's run or pass. It's up to the quickness of the quarterback getting rid of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And they really have to if they're gonna leave downfield. They really need to know. They can't have it just be read their normal keys. It's like they have an extra thing they have to know. It's kind of leaving at the right time on the punt.
Mm-hmm.
I
would say in ours, and we run a few RPOs. The O-line has no clue where the ball is, so they come off run blocking, and if they happen to get downfield, We put it on the quarterback by not getting rid of the ball in a timely manner.
Okay.
So because they think it's a run because because we could hand it off. So they don't know if it's going to be a pass down the field. So it's up to the quarterback to get rid of the ball in time enough for those guys not to get downfield. And normally on most RPOs, the read is quick. The
Okay.
read is quick. It's like if this guy move, you do X. If he don't move, you do Z. And it's normally one person that they're focusing in on. And so the quarterback has to make a decision as soon as the ball snaps.
All right. That's good. That's good to know, man. So is it and it's a lot of run pass option, not read option. And there's not, if there's a read option play where the quarterback gets outside the pocket, do you have any specific coaching moves about telling him you can't throw the ball at that point because you might have guys downfield?
If it's read option, you still can throw the ball, but you can't throw it down the field. Because we actually have a play where if the end takes the running back, the quarterback can pull it. And so if the alley guy shows up to tackle him, he just drops it off to a guy in the flats. Well, actually, he's behind the line of scrimmage. He's not even in the flats. He's behind the line of scrimmage, waiting to see if the quarterback gonna give him the ball.
Okay, so it's still a pretty quick read, is what you're, I think, telling me. So if the thing I've seen more from Jackson, this has happened this year already, is he rolled left out of the pocket, play got stretched out, there's nowhere for him to go, he dances around a little bit, and then he throws the ball away, and then obviously there's players downfield because they were expecting a run.
Yep. Or some kind of rollout where the ball should have been gone.
Yeah.
And they end up chasing guys, downfield. It's tough on the O-line when you have a guy that is unpredictable, but then the rewards to me greatly outweigh those little risks because of the things he can do.
There you go. All right, let's move on here. It's not a pleasant offensive line thing. Bozeman, I mentioned the -1 points on 10 pulls. He otherwise wasn't terrible. He allowed a pressure, but he was not otherwise particularly bad in pass protection. His only the penetration he allowed, which is a loss on a run play, was on a pull, so that's taken care of. In fact, he allowed 1.5 on pulls. So he wasn't bad otherwise, but it's still a D in total, including a false start penalty. Anything to say about Bozeman, by the way? Has been playing pretty well.
Bozeman, to me, really has the same role he has last year. He's just not getting those cave down walls so he can openly pull to certain spots. His pulls were clear. The guy he was going to block was pretty much clean, identified, because we all knew Yonder was not going to miss very many down blocks. So now he's having to fight a little trash to get to where he needs to be. But I was impressed with Bozeman last year because I thought he was going to lose the job, and I'm still a Bozeman fan. It's just the five as a whole need to figure it out. But as far as Bozeman individual, I'm good with Bozeman.
Yeah, he's at least the team's third best lineman. You could even say over the past 3/4 of a year, he might have been the most consistent lineman, other than Yanda, who's now gone, obviously. So, it's certainly if they can't depend on him, I don't know what they got left.
Right.
Matt Skura allowed parts of 3 pressure events. He's the only one who didn't get penalized. Did make 2 nice combination blocks. This wasn't a game for a lot of highlight blocks for the Ravens, but both tackles and Skura against a 4-3, and you mentioned some of the reasons why, because the guard is usually taken up or can be often taken up by a 3-tech one way. Those are the guys making the level 2 blocks, center, tackle, and Skura made a couple nice combination blocks in this game. C overall, not bad. Skura's been very good since the first week. This is his first mediocre game since week 1.
I think he's getting healthier, which is going to translate into his gameplay. And obviously he's healthy enough to play since week 1, but still him having confidence in that knee and being able to move like he should. Like I actually saw a play where he snapped and pulled. Matter of fact, the touchdown run, he snapped and pulled, and I was impressed with how quick he got out, even though he didn't block anybody.
Right.
He snapped and got out there, and it's tough for a center to snap and pull. That's only elite guys can do that and do it effectively.
Yeah, he pulls a little bit in the Ravens offense, but I think that was it was him. It was on the 37 exactly. It was him and Stanley both pulling, and you're right, he missed that block. But he made his other pull in this game, so it's he's not a zero in that area certainly. I'm happy to see him have 5 level 2 blocks in this game, because that was my big concern about him, was the mobility numbers were just not going to be there anymore. But he did some good things in this game that had me feeling better, even though the grade did not work out as well as it has other times. let's get on talking about the right guard position, is where everybody wants to hear. Phillips, my expectation was coming into this game, and this is why I don't like to talk about the offensive line at all until I score it block by block. My expectation was that he was going to get destroyed by Cox. Just watching the game, Cox was in the backfield the whole game. He got great push. But when I really looked at it, he really only gave up one pressure and one penetration to Cox that were, one-on-one beats. There were other times when he gave a little ground, and it might have given Bozeman some trouble on pulls. He also had an offensive holding in the game, but his overall game was not that bad. And given if it was Fletcher Cox, the normal adjustments that go with that, it's a C for Phillips, and I actually think that's a pretty good result, especially considering we're still fairly early in his development, especially if you give him the leniency of, hey, his first 4 weeks of the season were his preseason.
Exactly. I agree with you 100% on that. Any guard, no matter your time in the NFL, is going to have a problem with Fletcher Cox. He's one of the premier guys next to Aaron Donald. So, for him to give up that least amount of pressure and to execute his blocks as much as he did, I couldn't be happier for Phillips, even with the little mistakes he made. And on top of the fact that it probably was a little pride in there, both being Mississippi State guys. Mm-hmm. So that, that kind of factored in a little bit too. So I'm sure Cox was around when they maybe was in spring ball and stuff like that. So they probably know each other outside of football. So it was a little ego, I got to do something to hold my own versus Cox, because when we go back to Mississippi State, he can't just talk about how he dogged me.
Yeah, I guarantee you that was one of the good handshakes after the game. I'd like to hear what they said to each other, but I'm sure it was very, very positive. And Phillips missed the end of the game, which was unfortunate with apparently another injury, which casts some question about who's going to be the right guard going forward. And the Ravens go into a bye week, and that's the wrong time for there to be a question if you're Phillips, because I think he's continued to earn the right to fail. I don't think he's failed yet. Mm-hmm. And the Ravens have several backups. McCary did not have a good game this week. We'll get to that in a minute. Powers has played pretty well when he's been in there, although he had a holding penalty last week that wasn't good. And they still have DJ Fluker, who has played guard. So there's several options. What do you think? What do you see the Ravens doing at this point? First of all, if Phillips is healthy, and second of all, if he's not.
If he's healthy, I say go with it, because I like playing him. If he gets all his bumps and bruises out as a rookie, we're looking at a guy that can kind of solidify that position at least until whatever that rookie deal is. Mm-hmm. So that gives you stability there at that position for a while, especially with the looming paydays at tackle.
Yep.
Both right and left. Well, left and right. I think that's the time frame. Left first, then right. So, if he's healthy, I say go with him. Keep teaching him. Keep coaching him up. Keep letting him get those reps. And I roll with it, because he's a young guy. You can live with the mistakes of a rookie rather than putting a vet in there and they making the same mistakes. If a rookie and a vet on the same level, give me the rookie any day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Give me that first contract, the optionality with that. And you know what? I think you're hitting on exactly the topic here, because the question is going around Twitter, the worst place to, of course, get your questions. I'm sorry, I don't want to say that to every one of our listeners, because they're terrific football fans. But, you also get some bad opinions on Twitter. But the ask reason is, why isn't Fluker getting a chance? I think you're hitting on exactly the reason. Is DJ Fluker is cheap as hell this year. He's like $775,000 against the cap or thereabouts. I mean, it's really cheap. But next year, the Ravens don't have Fluker necessarily. Fluker's a free agent. So they've got a year two player, McCary. They got a year two player, Powers. And they got a rookie in Phillips. They would love to see what these guys can do. If one of the three of them is good, you get the dividend for that for 3 more years.
Correct. I agree. And if you stick Fluker in there, and which I thought he was going to win the job anyway. Mm-hmm. But if you stick him in there at guard, now you have a rookie as your swing tackle. Mm-hmm. And so I would rather have that vet that, even though he may not be as agile as Phillips as far as playing tackle, but he knows the game, knows the speed of the game, and has enough wherewithal and has played enough snaps to say what he can do versus different guys. Whereas if something happened to Stanley or Brown and we had to stick Phillips out there, he's green.
Yeah, that's a great point.
He's green.
Yeah, because and what you're saying about DJ, for example, is that he can adapt his style to, even though he knows he's going to get beat by speed by some guys, to push them past the pocket as a second alternative, as opposed to keeping his feet in front of them, which he
Right.
probably can't do.
Right, exactly. He knows where he's weak at, and he has enough what's moxie as a veteran to cover his weakness up.
With
Now,
hand play or punching, whatnot.
yes, because he's strong as an ox.
Yeah, so it'd be nice in a lot of ways. Having a bully there would really help at right guard. I think Phillips is going to be more physically filled out by next year. So if he gets it done this year, he should take a big step forward next year as a player. I'm hoping he can finish the year at a C level, say here, and we'll be real excited about where he is for next year.
I have a friend of mine. We use the term grown man body.
Yeah.
So, and the NFL players get their grown man body after that rookie year. They've been in the NFL offseason for a year. They probably can afford a nutritionist. They start to get their grown man body and fill out more and be able to use their full capabilities.
There you go. Grown man strength. There you go. Let's talk about Brown for a second here. He had a solid game against Brandon Graham. 55. Brandon Graham's lined up on that offensive right side at left defensive end for the entire game. 2 pressures, 1 illegal formation. I thought the illegal formation, particularly on him, was kind of ticky-tack. His foot was back. His helmet was almost in the spot. It's such a sense of degrees here. It's almost like the officials decided it was going to be called in this game. Or maybe the Eagles said, hey, look, everybody tries to line up deep against us. Watch extra close for this, and the officials just did.
Yep.
But they get a meeting with the officials. Both teams do before the game to talk about it. Most specifically, trick plays, but other things that they want really looked at in terms of the opponents and what they're doing. They think.
Yeah, because we do it on our level too. If we see something that we think is not right, like for instance, we played a team that was basically cutting our pullers, which is illegal on our level, and we pointed it out. And they got about 12 warnings. Never got a flag, but they got about 12 warnings. So
that doesn't do you a lot of good.
So it happens. It happens. And then, like you said, if we got formations that are kind of non-traditional, like if we go gun right and we have 2 receivers on the line, we kind of let them know we got different little tricky formations like that to look out for them. They not throw a flag on us.
Yeah, the Ravens have done some of that. They had, Max Williams lining up in the middle of the offensive line at some point, but offset so he could still be a receiver. So it was a really weird formation. But anyway, they talked about the officials obviously about that before the game, so it wouldn't draw a flag. So anyway, Brown a B- for the game. He was actually the most solid, or sorry, a B. He was the most solid of the Ravens linemen by far. I thought he actually played pretty well. McCary, I want to talk about a little bit because he's one of the guard candidates. Consistently seems to be getting opportunities. Got all the chances at center last year. Played some at guard last year as well. Got the first chance to be a backup guard this year when time was missed. And he made 10 of 16 blocks in this game, which isn't good. That would be a 63 raw score. But he also allowed a penetration, allowed a pressure, and was flagged for offensive holding. Net of 0 points for the game. That's a 0 score. That is a level rarely approached. He did not have the requisite. 10 of 14 blocks. He did not have the requisite 20 snaps to get a grade, but 0 points obviously would be an F, even if he had 24. I got to change that number. It's about 20 additional successful blocks he would have needed in order to get to the D- level with adjustments. So obviously not a good game for McCary. And I think this has to figure into how they go ahead. I know it was a tough offensive line. I know, the holding calls against Fletcher Cox, and again, it's a tough hold. He had a tough assignment, no doubt about it, but you also got to think about, is arm length really impacting what he needs to do at right guard as opposed to Phillips, who's, arms are over 35 inches long, seems to have that down. And then you got Powers, who's in the middle, and obviously has not had as much opportunity, but we really don't know what they're not liking about him that McCary keeps getting chances.
Right, and we would only know if we were in those meetings. It's because the one time I got to see Powers play, which was the game we shared, the Steelers game, and no preseason this year. That rotational game, 2 weeks ago? when he got in some.
That's right.
And then I think he may have been like the 6 O-line a couple times,
That's all.
this year. So he hasn't got any extensive time to even show other than that switcheroo game. And, to me, it's like they just searching. We got to solidify that spot. And
Even that game, he got only 16 snaps, and McCary got 45. So it's not like there was a pretense that it was going to be an even split of that.
So still, it's something we're not allowed to know or see or whatnot because we can't be around as much. That they're not liking that McCarr keeps getting those chances, or they're just letting him play it out and like, look, you're not gonna be our guy, and then they're gonna keep Powers and go from there. I guess they're giving him chances to prove himself, and this bye week may be the point where we're like, okay, our preseason's over, now we putting the A squad together, and we sticking with these unless we get injuries.
Yeah, I mean, this makes sense, doesn't it? You have time, you can reset this, you can make a evaluation and self-scout and just decide, hey, what we've got is not good enough. We have to make this change. And they were great last year on defense, I thought, in particular, flushing the toilet, as I call it, on their inside linebacker core when it really had to be done.
Right.
And that turned their whole season around defensively. I think it's, it might not be it's something they will consider. I just think, honestly, that Phillips has played well enough to continue at this point.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And then if Phillips is hurt, who do you want to see?
I personally would like to see Powers, but I haven't seen enough of him to say he's going to be good or not. But, just off McCarry scoring from this week, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. And then how did he score last week? Because the naked eye didn't look great.
I think, he wasn't great. It was a D last week, I believe, and that was when he had more snaps, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have it right in front of me. I'm sorry about that, Coach.
Yeah, that's fine. I would like to see Powers. I would like to see Powers. And if McCarry can't get it done, Powers with Bredesen as his backup.
Right. McCary a D against Cincinnati confirmed. It was on the low end of the range too. So just to lay that in there.
Gotcha.
But I'm with you. I would like to see Powers get a chance. And part of this is just I want to see what we have before it's too late in a player they invested a 4th-round draft pick in. That's a sunk cost at this point. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe think of it from the other way, of a player they still have for 2 years after this, because he was a draft pick, signed a 4-year contract, doesn't have any RFA price tag associated with him. I mean, he's cheap for 2 more years after this. Boy, it'd be nice to see if we've got a ball player here.
Right, and I really would hate to see him play that out and then go somewhere else and just ball.
And be good, yeah. Yeah, that would suck. All right. Let's move on here a little bit. Let's talk about Lamar, because he's obviously one of the real topics of discussion around town. One thing I liked about his game here was he took care of the football.
Yes.
Many fewer interceptable passes than against Cincinnati.
Yeah, he does. He's getting better at respecting the ball, because sometimes he don't have the love and care for the ball like I feel like he should, even though people don't necessarily get it out. But just the fact that he have it dangling out there, and when he's stepping up in the pocket, it's not 2 hands on the ball, and he scares me sometimes with the ball. But the fact when you don't turn it over, I guess you don't really matter with that. What I'm saying, as long as you take care of the ball and keep it, do whatever you need to do to keep it.
I think a lot of his deep passing, and even in the intermediate passing routes that he's thrown, he was tremendously effective at being aware of where the other defenders were around there. And on the deep ball, maybe to a fault. Maybe he didn't take enough chances leaving the ball close enough on deep routes for Brown to really let him run under the ball, put more air under the ball as opposed to throwing a kind of a longer, flatter ball. Obviously, multiple ways to do this. You trust your receivers. You tend to leave more air under that football. Probably creates a slightly more interceptable pass. Also creates more opportunities for pass interference on the other side. But I think that his last year was an amazing year of being careful with the football, and he's not too far off that right now in this year in terms of his same pace for interceptions and touchdowns.
And I think he's throwing more lower percentage passes too. Because last year pretty much everything was right around, I'm gonna say in the middle of the hash, but right around the hash marks and whatnot. And if they were outside the numbers, it was short. So now he's actually trying to develop that outside game, and you can tell he's taking more chances with deeper outs or deep over routes and stuff like that. Whereas normally last year, he may have just saw that and feel like I can't hit that, so I'm gonna take off.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That's certainly something we probably want to see him take those chances, even if there's some bad results, because that's what's going to make him the complete quarterback, and it's what's going to make the Ravens offense challenge every spot on this football field, which is going to make them much more dangerous.
Yes, I agree.
Ran as well as he had in this game in a long time. You know, obviously it was really 7 for 110 when you take out the couple of kneels. So that's what 15 yards and change per 15.7 per rush without those 2 kneels.
Yeah, and when I remember doing the little post game thing, and I pulled up the stats, and when he was over 100, I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see 100 yards rushing, but they're there, especially with the play where he sealed the game. That was probably another 20 or so yards right there.
Yep. As he had 21 there. I think he had 24 on an earlier scramble, and he had the 37-yard touchdown run on that was designed. They're doing more of the design runs, and we've talked about this a fair amount on the show already. The change from being primarily a pistol team last year to being more of this split back set where the back is either left or right of the quarterback, and they're doing a front mesh point.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about those two options and the move away from the pistol and how it's affecting the offense?
Me personally, I think we need to have that pistol, but when we do pistol, that should be Gus's job, because that's downhill running. Give Gus the ball coming downhill. If we're going to do the stuff on the side, let JK do it. Let Mark do it. But if we go into the pistol, which I loved the pistol last year, let that be Gus's job. Gus shouldn't be running outside zones and whatnot. Give Gus the ball. Run power. Run some kind of, option read where he's going downhill and you got the option to pull it. Don't have Gus going side to side. Let Terminator go through the middle and mess people up. Did they not see how he looked in the preseason? He looked better than the defensive ends.
Yeah. One of the questions that comes up is, are you then giving away what your 2 read possibilities are by showing pistol or showing this? What do you call it when the back is to one side of the quarterback?
I just call it on the hip. That's
on the
my
hip.
terminology. I just call it on the hip.
Okay. I use that. I like that better anyway. Okay, so if the back's on the hip as opposed to in the pistol,
Mm-hmm.
then are you giving away the play? If Dobbins is always on his hip, then Dobbins can only run a stretch play or to the right or to the left, depending on which side he's on. And Jackson, then you're committing, in a sense, to run him up the middle. Now, you can run the opposite direction with Jackson also, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense to run the same direction with Jackson. The direction you indicate for the running.
Right. Now, that a lot of people try to scheme depending on which side you put the running back on, but you can also have counters to go there. Because if let's say whoever the back is on his left, and most of the plays are flowing right because the back is on his left, you can always do speed option or something back to the other side to make those guys be honest.
Okay, so now you're talking about something like Duvernay orbiting back for a reverse.
No, I'm talking about just
Jackson.
The same 2 guys instead of the back flowing across Jackson's face at mesh point. They just run speed option that way once or twice. Mm-hmm. That keeps those guys from just screaming down and taking the dive and then having somebody scrape for Lamar.
Okay, that's a great point. Okay, so are the Ravens doing enough of that to disguise their intention? Obviously, they've done some jet motion things, because you can run jet motion when you're on the hip, and you can run, some of the orbit motion plays they've run in terms of having Duvernay. It's kind of a delayed orbit motion. It's not really orbit motion, but have him reverse or even show the reverse. You
can do all those things, but the one thing I don't like about it is we've started to implement Hollywood in those orbits and whatnot, and we haven't given him the ball. So nobody has to respect it. He goes in the backfield and kind of fakes like he may be a pitch man or whatnot, but nobody's respecting that because we haven't done it.
Right.
So really, to me, that's every time we do that and he don't get the ball, it's a wasted play. He has to get the ball at least once for people to start respecting it.
Is that something the Ravens will self-scout over the bye week and say, yeah, we need to do that? We need to script plays for him to get the ball, because they're not following him. They're not doing anything.
Yeah, it should. I mean, they make a lot of money.
I wonder if those guys who are actually doing the self-scouting really do make a lot of money. I'm sure they did. I'm sure it's probably not as lucrative as you might think. All
No,
right.
I'm speaking on the actual coaches.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Roman certainly does. He's making some good money. It's not a terrible game for traditional passing metrics for Lamar. He had a very low ample time and space percentage, and I respect what he was able to accomplish in this game as a passer. He did not have a great game of creating, with the exception of the touchdown pass to Boyle. I didn't think he had a great game of moving around and then finding a target. We had seen more of that in previous games, certainly in some of the plays he made happen to Andrews. That's one of the questions I have is, were they restricting Andrews' targets in some way in this game? Because it seems like he was not a part of scripted action at all. Didn't get his first catch until fairly late.
Yeah, I think they did the same thing in Hollywood too. Hollywood didn't catch a ball till the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe late in the second. I think they were listening to the whispers and trying to get other people the ball, and just to get them in the game. You get Boykin in the game early. A little quick catch or a little hitch or something like that. They tend to, and not just Boykin, they tend to play harder the rest of the game. For guys that are like not the stars, if you get them something early, they tend to play better. For example, and I know we're talking about football, but let's take basketball for a second. You think about LeBron. He tries to get his other guys in the game early to get them going, get them lathered up, and then he'll get his later. So that's what I think they need to do with Duvernay. That's why Duvernay touches the ball early. That's why we get a quick out in some way, shape, or form or fashion to Boykin early. And just to get them, okay, we got you in the game, you get your blood flowing. Let's go now and see how it goes. But then we just kind of forget about them.
Well, in some of that, I've got to put on Lamar, because the scripted plays are getting the ball in the hands that they want. They're all of the special plays with Duvernay, they all seem to come on the scripted plays. So they went through a walkthrough on those plays to go step by step through them in the Friday before this game. That's what that means to be a scripted play. And they might pull it out in the first half, but might pull it out in the second half, but most of them in the first half, because they're mostly show plays too, to show the opposing defensive coordinator, hey, we can do all these things, and to show the next 5 opponents, hey, we can do all these things.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me about it is, I would like to have a scripted trust throw to Boykin or two at some point that would allow Lamar to really build the trust he needs to throw him the ball later in the game in some 50-50 situations, or some situations where Boykin may need to prevent an interception. So you go ahead and you throw a deep ball to Boykin. You get comfortable with who he is, and if it doesn't work out, well, it's my fault as the offensive coordinator. I put in that scripted play. I'm sorry, Lamar. We'll get him a better look in a different way the next game. But if he does catch the ball, then Lamar said, "Wow, Miles Boykin really went up for that ball. I'll throw him another." That's what I want. I want to build that trust somehow with scripted plays.
And it's funny you say that, because if we can think back to Boykin's first touchdown, it was exactly what you just mentioned. In the end zone in Miami, the DB they was on him. He just threw it up. Boykin lost the DB and caught a jump ball.
It was a great read by Lamar, because he saw both backs of the DBs at the same time, and he knew that Boykin would be the only one to be able to react to it. But he trusted him to do it. He threw it up in the middle, open space in the end zone. I mean, that's a scary throw for even a second-year quarterback. And Boykin went and got the ball. So, and he's had others too, where he's had to trust the break properly at a touchdown reception against Cleveland that was similar to that. And I want to see more of that. And if the trust doesn't come naturally, I think it's up to the offensive coordinator to build that into the scheme, build that into the scripted plays, so that becomes more natural for both Lamar and for Boykin to do the right things.
Because we're at game 6, correct? And
we just finished.
I looked at Boykin's numbers earlier today. He's 10 catches for like 111 yards. We need more of that. We need more from him than that. That's what I mean. Because I think he's the key to unlocking that explosiveness, that explosive offense that we had last year. I think if him pulling guys out of the box and making them be too high at all times versus us is the key to us being able to do whatever we want to do in the run game.
Right. I
which
agree.
will open up the play action too.
Got to pressure every part of the field, and Boykin's a key in that. And if they're Boykin is effectively blocking if he takes a guy on a vertical route, but Boykin also, when he runs other routes, and he's got to run some other routes that are crossing patterns or slants or whatever, then he's tremendously effective as a point of attack blocker. As soon as a runner gets to the second level, in times, if he breaks anything towards that hash line, he's right in the play as far as being there. A great block, by the way, on Duvernay's 42-yard run. Against Cincinnati, I think it was. He was out front of that play. He kept Wallace, I think it was the defensive back, but he blocked him all the way out of bounds and out of the play. Right. And I just love to see them take advantage of that whenever they can.
Josh, he's part of the no block. I still don't get the rock team.
There you go. I knew we'd fit that in there somehow. All right. Let's see. One other thing I noticed from this one, and I wanted to make sure we talked about this, is that the Philly edge defenders had an unusual way. They consistently were going for the running back on the read option. And that was a lot of the front read option, a lot of the, on the hip, but that means the mesh point is in front of Lamar. And they were consistently going for it. And I think Lamar might have figured it out by the end of that game. Obviously, he's making a read, so he's having to decide on that particular play. But it looked like both edge guys were happy to go for the running back play after play after play.
Now, that could be a defensive ploy, what they call scrape exchange. And when they do that, the end is taking the dive every time. And the linebacker, instead of hitting A or B gap, is just coming over the top.
Goes to the outside.
So that could have been that. That could have been the way they designed it. And then maybe they had a faster guy they wanted to kind of be on Lamar. So they just say, hey, you defensive end, take the dive, and we got somebody for the quarterback. And they could have been using the safety to come down too.
If you go back to the Tennessee game, it was scrape exchange that worked very well with Ryan and other defenders able to get to that spot and contain Lamar in that game. So it certainly it wouldn't be unusual for that to happen. But Eagles seem to be systematically definitely going after that running back. Tell you what, let's take a little while here. Talk about any skill position players you like. Coach, you're the guest. Please bring up the first player you'd like to talk about, whoever that might be.
Honestly, on the offensive side of the ball, man, it's the only guy that even had a decent day was Lamar. Because I want more out of the running backs, but they don't get enough carries because it's so many of them. And nobody can really get a feel or whatnot. So I'm going to just say Lamar because he busted 100 yards for, I think it was the first time this year he busted 100 yards. And he protected the ball.
But in terms of the individual players, do the Ravens need a lead back for starters, or are they doing something that it has some real merit to it to split the carries in this very egalitarian, very, very equal way?
I think in a perfect world we need a lead back with a bullpen guy, so to speak. But I think we got 3 bullpen guys trying to start games. If that makes sense, since Josh like the Orioles, so we ain't coming with a true number one. We're hitting you with 3-4 bullpen guys to try to close the game out, and nobody's really getting a complete feel for the game.
I think we would say that Ingram was a number one last year.
And I don't think he's that anymore.
Yeah, so he's lost a step, possibly due to the injury last year, but definitely he's now hurt again. I would agree that it's always a concern for running backs, and Ingram is at that age where you'd really expect him to decline pretty quickly at some point. That production would fall off. Is there any chance Ingram is still on this team next year, in your opinion?
I don't think so. I think he was I think I might have got the term from you. He signed 3 to play 2.
There you go.
And so I think that's where we are with, obviously evident by drafting Dobbins and keeping the other guys that we have, because we haven't seen justice yet either.
Yeah, that's a little disturbing. He's kind of like the Ben Powers of the running backs, is a second-year guy who we don't really know what we have. And didn't perform well as a receiver last year, but is this now an opportunity to get some scripted plays in, to get some other just normal backfield carries and opportunities on passing downs for Justice Hill if Mark Ingram has to sit out a game?
I would think so, especially if they're going to continue to rotate the backs in. I feel like he could just pick up those snaps that Mark got, but not necessarily run those same plays.
Mm-hmm.
He's a different type of guy. He's an outside zone guy. He's a scat back. He should him like when he shouldn't run the same type plays Gus run. The only person that could potentially do that, I would say, would be Mark, because they're both power backs. J.K. maybe, but not as a rookie. But Hill, I mean not Hill, Hill should be an outside guy. He should be the guy that's like when we run power read, or when we do like the bash play, some people call it, as we scored the touchdown on. That should be the type of stuff Justice in, because Justice himself running lateral to the line can hold a defensive end.
Right.
Because if
Now,
the end don't take him, he can just outrun them.
So you got options that go with that. Obviously, you got jet motion. You've got orbit motion you can do with Hill. You can put him in the – I think he is the one back that you can put in as a second back and treat him more like a receiver, because he is a player. You're trying to get the ball in his hands in space, whatever that is. I don't want to discount what he did at the end of last year, because against Pittsburgh he really showed some proclivity to be a power runner, I thought also.
Yeah, I mean – He's in his grown man body, so he obviously at Oklahoma State he was a slash scat outside zone, inside zone type deal. But at this point, yeah, he can, pretty much all the backs we have the ability to run inside the tackle. But you just think about, I'd much rather have a 6'2" guy, coming downhill rather than Hill. And no disrespect to Hill, it's just Gus is so much bigger. He's so much built for that pounding. And as a linebacker, if I'm hitting on a guy that's bigger than me, eventually I'm gonna be like, man, forget this.
Makes it harder to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else to talk about in terms of Duvernay? Any kind of different usage you're looking for?
I like what we're doing with him. I think he needs a slightly bigger package, not just that first scripted play, whatever that play is in the script. And we did do something with him that I haven't seen before on the little screenish type route where he got the first down. Mm-hmm. That play, I think he was the number 2 receiver, and they just sent the other guys to block, and Lamar hit him real quick, and he almost popped that for the touchdown. I think it was 3rd and 6 or 7, and he got what we needed for the first down. But had he been able to catch his balance on one more step, he would have popped that for a touchdown. But him on the reverses, him in the return game, I like getting him on the field. He at least needs to touch the ball 4 to 5 times a game. Mm-hmm. But then we get into that thing with the backs, and then we want more receivers. And so if we get all these touches that we want for different people, the defense is just not going to play at all.
One of the things that I'm kind of worried about here is a lot of people want to get Antonio Brown. Not everybody, and I don't know where you stand on the thing, but or they want to get another number 1 receiver to bring in that they think that will be the thing that will fix the passing game. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you're doing is you're dooming some of these young receivers to basically lose their snaps. Duvernay would become just a scripted play guy, back to 5 plays a game. He played 26 snaps in this last game, by the way. Mm-hmm. He'd be back to 5-7 snaps a game, just some gadgety plays, just some scripted stuff. Prochet's not going to play it all this season. If another big receiver comes in, Hollywood may lose some snaps out of the deal. Boykin's going to lose a ton of snaps out of the deal if you bring somebody in. So that's my question for you: is do you really want that? Do you really believe enough in who Antonio Brown is? And probably a lot of it is what the trust factor would be between Lamar and Antonio Brown, mm-hmm. to think that would be a good idea.
I think Antonio on a team gives you instant credibility as far as how you play it, how you cover him. There aren't a lot of guys that, if he comes back 90% of what he was when he left, there are not a lot of guys that can cover him one-on-one. So, bam, you got to have a safety at least looking over there to see what he's doing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let's say he comes back 75% of what he was, but we don't know yet exactly what he is. Do you think initially, at least, he will garner the Randy Moss treatment on the Ravens, that they stack a safety on his side and have a corner there just to make sure? So you may have cover 1, but it's cover 1 on that side of the field because you're so concerned about him, and you let your island corner on Hollywood, and maybe that opens up the field in other ways.
Initially, no. And I feel like NFL is, you got to prove it first. So initially, I think if he showed up week 9 and played, they're gonna test him with a man-to-man corner. You ain't played in pretty much a little over a year, more than a year. Let's see what you still got. So he'll be tested early with just single coverage and just like a average guy. Now if he starts to beat that, then it's different.
So I can see two good reasons to go out and get AB that go counter to all of the potential locker room poison and attitude, behavior, and other things that one of my big fears is that Lamar and Hollywood love AB. And there's not going to be a trust issue there, but there's going to be a production issue. And AB is going to not be the player they hoped he was, or AB is going to do something stupid because that's always a possibility.
All right.
And then the team is going to say, we got to get rid of him. And they're going to have to explain it to Lamar or to Hollywood. The fans, it won't be any problem. They'll understand, most of them.
That's the flip side of bringing him in, because, like you said, they love him. They already love him. I know they do. And if he does something to warrant getting rid of or a slap on the wrist, whatever, now you got to deal with the emotions of letting him go with pretty much 2 of your best offensive players.
Yeah. It's exactly the problem as far as I'm concerned. That happens all the time, by the way, in the corporate world. That you have somebody who's in love with somebody that works for them. I mean, you can't, and it could be actual love, or it could be just they really like who they are as an employee and they deal really well with them. But you can't let that situation occur. It's just poisonous to the organization to let it occur. And it's funny that people who are on Twitter probably understand that completely, or many of them do, and that they don't get it in terms of a football play where it's even more of an issue.
Now my thing is, as far as bringing guys in, I wouldn't even bring a guy in unless they were of his capabilities. I wouldn't bring an average journeyman guy in. I wouldn't bring a Mohamed Sanu in. If I'm going to bring somebody in, he has to be a guy that his upside is going to be worth the risk.
So, when you really look at it, there are not that many total receivers that are obviously available. Now, there's a number of teams that are going to be sellers because of COVID and the cap next year being constrained. But I think that there's going to be – it's not obvious to me all the players. So, some people are talking about Marvin Jones. Well, Marvin Jones is 30 years old now. He's all of a sudden dropped from 9 to 6 yards a target. Do you want that guy? I'm not convinced that I want to give all of Miles Boykin's targets to Marvin Jones.
But to me, it's AB or nobody.
Yeah,
it's AB or nobody, because a lot of people are talking about trading for Julio. I mean, can we really afford that? And whether we can or can't, I don't know. I'm not a cap guy, but to me it's AB or nobody, because he's gonna be cheap.
Yep.
But if it's somebody else, we're gonna be in that cap situation. But if not, develop Miles. Give him an opportunity. He hasn't had enough of an opportunity. He doesn't have enough of a body of work to say whether he sucks or not. To me, I mean, he has some issues, some trust issues with Lamar, but he hasn't had enough balls thrown his way to say, okay, this dude ain't it.
Yeah.
It's a question mark there, definitely. But to me, it's just he don't have enough to say, hey, get rid of him, or just when his contract over, he gone.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that. Let's go through real quickly on the MVPs on this. And you mentioned kind of the giveaway, the spoiler on this, that Jackson's the only one who really did anything on offense. I've got 2 other players on my list who my number 3 guy is Orlando Brown. Really was the best of the offensive linemen, and it's hard to pick among a lot of the skill position players. But who would you point to as being the other guy who contributed something on offense?
I want to say Orlando, simply because he made a statement a couple weeks ago about the right tackle being the lesser tackle, and he laughed it off in some interview. And the fact that he says that, and he still wants to, well, not still wants to, he still goes out there and does his job the way he does, because he gets the best pass rusher almost every week. And for him and he don't have the greatest of feet to handle his business the way he does, I really like where he is in his career right now.
Yeah, that's more pronounced now than it used to be. But the rush end, the rush defensive end, who's facing usually the naked left tackle, no tight end on that side. okay, is often that guy who is your bigger, better run defender, but maybe not quite the same pass rusher that you have on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it really usually is. Now you get your lighter Von Milver, Elvis Dumervil, Brandon Graham. You know, I want to think about current players, not Elvis Dumervil, but you get the idea.
Yes.
Are players who can rush from that side, and it's much more the traditional wisdom is that you may get a tight end on that guy if you stick him over there.
Yeah. And then he got Watt coming up next.
Yeah. What about Watt in terms of, and I'm not TJ, but JJ as being an acquisition?
I'm all for it. If we can afford it, I'm all for it. Because we got a couple of pressures this week with 4.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stick Watt in that mix anywhere, I think that number goes up. That number goes up tremendously because it's crazy to imagine Watt and Calais Campbell on the same line. Because whoever single covered, and Calais did his thing with single coverage this week, as we all know, is going to beat their guy. Unless, it's a premier tackle. So that's scary to even think about Watt on this, defensive line with the DBs that we have, with Calais Campbell, with the speed at linebacker we got.
He's the one big name that I think might make some sense. First of all, I think the Texans really have to get rid of the contract because they can't afford it next year, and I believe the money is guaranteed. So the Ravens would also be stuck with it. It's $17.5 million next year. It's 10 and change this year. And if the Ravens traded for him, they don't have to trade much in terms of draft capital. So I don't want him for a second. If the Texans say, well, we want a second for J.J. Watt, we can't sell it to our fans. We can't look ourselves in the mirror if we trade J.J. Watt for less than that. Well, then I'm sorry. He's yours. We can't help you. But if they would trade him for a third or a fourth, I think I'd do it.
Yeah. And then that money that we're not going to give Judon would be there for Watt.
Well, that money that we're not going to give Judon has been spent a couple other times too. So yeah, we're in good shape. Tell you what, let's go to the mailbag. What do we got, Josh?
Sorry, I was looking up when Antonio Brown's allowed back, and it's November 2nd.
Week 9.
Yeah, so November 2nd, so 2 weeks away. And now I understand why everyone's saying the world's going to be crazy at the beginning of November. It's all for Antonio Brown. So, all right, let's get to the mailbag using the hashtag Filmstudy mailbag over on Twitter. So first one up, we're going to Lauren, who says, I need to catch up, but it's from my perspective that 90% of the offensive problems start with the offensive line and the AB gaps, plus having to send the blocking tight ends now out on more passing routes.
Okay, let's start with the blocking tight end thing. I think that the running game still centers around having seven powerful blockers, the offensive line, and a tight end and Ricard. And frankly, I think they're shorthanded now at tight end in terms of not having a third guy to really run a lot of very viable 13 personnel. And it's one of the spots I'd like them to look at during this bye week is there a guy out there, a sure-handed tight end who's not necessarily a good blocker, because that's the marginal characteristic I think I can work with. Can line up in the backfield as Hurst did last year, but has really good hands, get out to level 2, level 3, has the quickness to make good blocks there, but not necessarily known as a power blocker.
I don't think there's anybody out there either. It's a vital H-back. What we're looking for is an H-back type guy. And the thing is, you're probably going to find either the mauler or the pass receiver. And so I don't think you're going to find a guy that has enough intangibles to do both on the level that we want him to do.
I think I'm okay with just the receiver. So if we had Hayden Hurst again, I'd love that. I mean, he was pretty much just a receiver. Jacob Hollister is a name that's come up today from Seattle, who might be a guy who could fill that role.
Hollister does a lot for them too. With even though he's like the second or third guy, but Russ, a lot of big third downs because they're on TV all the time now. Russ can count on that guy on top of the guy. His last name starts with a D, Dempsey or whatever his name is. So that is an option, too. Because I think we need a third guy.
Okay.
Because we're missing that spots in our offense. And we're not producing like we did last year. So I don't know if the correlation to not really having a third guy in there is affecting what we do, or not, but that's one of the things to look at because that's one of the things that we don't have that we had last year.
Right. It's very valid. And, 13 personnel, a lot of people have made up that was really the deal. You just can't play the same 13 personnel with Ricard.
Right.
So,
All right, we had a few people send in the USA Today for the win article that kind of broke down the Ravens comparing last year to this year. And they kind of came down to it being about Lamar's performance in empty sets. Does that make sense to you? And then the next question I'm going to tackle on, as I'm combining some mailbag questions, is can this year's offense, even without Yanda, do they have the right skill sets to perform like last year?
let me start with the last part of that question because it's really expectations based. There's no way the Ravens are going to play like they did last year. They had a historic offensive season. Lamar had a historic season. They had more talent with Yanda and Hurst in terms of who they had on offense. They got Duvernay this year. He's a nice, exciting addition. But they swapped down for Yanda to Phillips, and they've got other issues along the offensive line, a few more injuries to deal with. It's not as talented an offensive unit. Plus, they played at a historic level last year. So, I'll start with the expectation level. Unreasonable to expect the same level.
I agree. The other 31 teams get paid to do their job too. So if we came back and had the same exact or even better success, those other guys are not doing their job. No matter how much, how many wrinkles or whatnot Wink, puts in or they put in on defense or Giro puts in. If we had the same success, the other guys are on, in the NFL not doing their job. Because they got a whole season to watch film, to see what we do, to try to stop it, to come up with something, to at least make us do something different, and which is kind of what's going on now.
Would it be fair to say, too, that Roman's ability to add wrinkles is going to add, arithmetically and incrementally in small increments to what they already do well and continue to surprise? It needs to be part of what he does. Mm-hmm. But the amount of ground that opposing defenses have to catch up to what the Ravens do is enormous. And so that's subject to larger gains by defenses working slightly different. And, as bad as this Ravens offense is, Josh, you mentioned at the top of the show, they're close to setting the record. They had 29 straight games of 20-plus points. They'll tie Denver for the all-time record if they can do it against the Steelers.
That's an amazing number.
100 straight halves, or it's now 101, they've scored in. I can't believe that number.
That's
all right. Well,
as much complaining we've done or doing.
Clearly, you guys are not listening to sports talk radio or online, as everyone says. It's because of the sidearm throw. So, and I'm glad we didn't get any questions about bringing Yanda back now because he looks like a track and field runner now, not a football player. So, Boykin, you guys covered Boykin a lot, but is there a reason that Harbaugh is maybe giving up on Boykin? And is there any chance of pulling Boykin back into a tight end position?
I don't think Harbaugh is giving up on Boykin. I think Lamar doesn't trust Boykin.
That's right, too.
That in turn, leaves him. To me, I see like 3 throwaway balls, like well, not 3 a game, but like 1 a game to Boykin where they're not on the same page. And it's like at a time where Lamar just like, you ain't do what I want, just throw this ball out of bounds. And because the ball, they're not even close. They're not. And I know when you have miscommunications, it's gonna look like that. But they're having the same miscommunications week in, week out.
That got addressed directly in the press conferences today, and it was very interesting. I did not hear it firsthand. Jeff Zrebeck reported it, and he said that the offensive coordinator, actually it wasn't the offensive coordinator, it was James Urban, so the quarterback coach, said the problem between Boykin and Lamar, and he might have said the problems, but the problem between Boykin and Lamar was in fact, it was in terms of Boykin hearing the play. And I said, well, wait a minute, is that hearing the play in terms of in the huddle, he's really got hearing problems? Is it not being able to process what he's hearing properly? Or is it being able to go out to the sideline and not hearing an audible that's coming in? Because you think about it, is there ever an easier audible environment than we've had in 2020?
Right. And I don't think Lamar audibles a lot. I don't think he even have the leeway to do that. I really don't. So I saw Jeff tweet something about that. I didn't get a chance to look it up because I was in class at the time, but I saw it across my phone, and I wanted to go back to it because when I saw Miles Boykin's name, that kind of threw my antennas up.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna go back and read it when we finish and see what that was. But to me, just off what you said, that's throwing a guy under the bus.
Well, what he said in the end was that, and this is Jeff correcting it, and he went back to the transcript. And by the way, the transcript can sometimes be changed from what was actually said. But Jeff went back to the transcript and looked at it and said that what the intention was by Urban was that he hadn't heard it in the huddle because he was working to move to his position too quickly. And then the Boykin, if you've ever heard him speak, extremely smart guy.
Yes.
I mean, he's clearly a very smart guy. It's got to be a matter of he's trying to overplay his position, and he's maybe overthinking the game in general. But he's not spending the time he needs to really just trying to understand that communication directly in the huddle. And you've no doubt run into all kinds of guys like that in real life who won't stand there and listen to you. They want to start running and doing the job. So anyway.
Yeah, but
Right,
to me, without any more feedback from it, I feel like that's throwing a guy on the bus.
So you think Urban, or do you blame Lamar for throwing Boykin under the bus? Because Urban is the one who said it.
I'm gonna blame Irvin because he's a professional. He should know how to dance around situations to not to do that. Because just if I'm Boykin, say Boykin takes that the same way I take it, now you got a problem.
Yeah,
he may not come out and say something, but he gonna be in his feelings when it comes to meetings or when it comes to you trying to coach me, or if you say something crazy to me.
And then they're in. I mean, obviously they're on the field together for practice, but they're also in different positional group meetings. So there's not the same opportunity to interact and try and make that right the way it could be. But
He shouldn't even spoke on Boykin. He should have left that to the receivers coach.
Well, and if that's coming out in a press conference like that, it's probably already a problem behind the scenes.
Exactly.
So it's probably not something where now he's upset Boykin. Him and Boykin already had an issue.
But it's public now, though, Josh. It was in-house
I
at
get the
first.
public-private thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably going to lead towards, if Lamar isn't clicking with this receiver, we got to bring in someone that Lamar can trust. And it's going to lead to that speculation.
Yep.
well, I hope they get
You
sorted
can
out.
clean things up if you keep them in-house.
Yeah, it's a great point.
All right. Well, that takes care of it, of the film study mailbag for today. Coach, let's get your YouTubes and Twitter and TikToks and all that out.
Well, no TikTok, but on YouTube it's SIP the number 2 to tally, TALLY. Twitter it's Coach Evans 9, and that's where you can find me. 2 to 3 films a week based off the game. We're in a bye week this week, so you'll get probably a little bit more since we don't have a game coming up. You'll get some more analysis of the Eagles game, or if not, I just may do a collection of the game so far. But that's where you can find me at. And when you do subscribe, make sure you hit the bell so you can know when I drop them, because I have late nights, because I'm going to do one tonight after we finish, and it's about almost midnight.
And it's a good thing you can teach in your sleep. And I understand you teach with an earbud. Hopefully none of your own students will hear this, so that you're able to kind of take in things as you go, listen to podcasts while you're teaching and whatnot.
Yep. I do, and especially in this COVID, because I only have like 5 or 6 kids in there. So that kind of keeps me going.
All right, man.
All right. On the podcast front, we've got By the Numbers coming out later this week as well. Know Your Foe, because it's a bye week, and that would be a really boring Know Your Foe. But next week we have our mid-season shows.
Yeah, looking forward to those. Brian McFarland coming on to talk about value relative to cap for all the players on the Ravens roster. That'll be a lot of fun. Alex Kozora is the Steelers expert we'll have in next week. We had him on before. He's excellent. A lot of fun to talk football with him. So that'll be fun too. We're going to have at least 2 By the Numbers, and we might have 3 between now and the Steelers game. So that's something to look forward to as well.
All right. Well, we will talk again soon.
Thank you guys for having me.